Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another AFL Fantasy Fanatics Tuesday night Q&A ahead of round 18. For those listening back on the podcast, it is Tuesday, the 8th of July. And yes, as always with the Thursday night footy, it's a pretty short turnaround as always, which I'm sure many of us do love. But I'm your host, Bales, and you can find me at BAILSDT across the socials. And joining me are a couple of my co-hosts and fellow AFL Fantasy Fanatics. And we'll start off, as always, with Tim Guest. Guesty, mate, how are you?
Not too bad, mate. Had a busy week. Happy to finally spend some time focusing and thinking about fantasy for the week to come.
Beautiful, mate. No, good to have you on board again. And jumping on, second week in a row, it is good. Another one of our co-hosts, Jane Poposky. Jane, mate, how are you? How was your weekend?
Yeah, not too badly. Didn't score the best, but I held it together. I was a bit worried about my squad and the kind of depth that I had, but held it together all right.
Yeah. Oh, well, I know your captains. Captains did well. I know you're number one expert, and I think you're top 20 or top 30 or something overall.
Well, I came third for the week, but my year hasn't been the best.
Yes.
Because, the first 2 months I kind of preset them and didn't go on and check because, I was away. So I couldn't do anything about that. So I'm still last.
Yeah. Oh, mate, you'll take third for the week. I saw that there are a lot of good captaincy options there this week. So congrats on the good week. We'll get a recap from your week very shortly. But joining us, a special guest, first time he's jumped on with us. We love getting new guests on. And one of the new podcasts around the Content Fantasy Footy Show. And he's one of their co-hosts. Jesse has jumped on with us. Jesse, mate, how are you? Welcome to the Fantasy Fanatics Tuesday Night Q&A. How are you?
Hey, Bales. Thanks for having me on. I'm good. Didn't have a great fantasy weekend. I think I dropped about 80 spots, so just shy of breaking even. But thanks so much for having me on. Long-time listener, so I know my co-host on the pod is a massive, massive fan as well, super fan even. So thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Beautiful. Thanks, mate. How was you obviously just touched on it then? What did you end up scoring in round 17? And what's your overall rank currently looking like?
Yes, I scored a 22.31 for round 17, and I got an overall rank of 3,715. So, dropped about 80 spots. Could have been a lot worse, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so sorry. Did you say you held rank, or you was it 80 spots?
I dropped by 80 spots. So
80 spots.
I'm going to say break even just to make myself feel a little bit better. But
yeah. Oh, that's all right. At least you didn't fall too far anyway, and still in the hunt maybe for that top 1,000 finish. Jade, mate, how did you go on the weekend? What was your score and what's your rank looking like?
I scored 22.13, and my rank just went down a bit from 2,045 down to 2,300. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, beautiful. Plus and minus 3 for you, Jade?
Let me just switch over to the last round scores. +3. I mean, I do kind of regret a couple of weeks ago I traded Merritt, and now everyone's wanting to get him back in, but I haven't lost any points yet, and that's because I went to Messiah Wanganeen-Miller. So he scored the same, so I'll take that as a small win. At least I didn't lose points on the other end. So he gets +3, -3. It's hard to split them, but Jordan Clark and Bailey Dale both got a tag, which wasn't great. And shout out Jake Saligo as well. Still not making me pay up for Dawson. He's just scoring roughly the same, so I'll keep backing him in.
What did you score on the weekend? I didn't even see his score.
95.
Oh, that's not too bad. Yeah, exactly. No, not too bad at all. Jesse, your plus and minus 3 from the past weekend?
+3 would be Jack Steele with a 130. A pick I've been questioning over the last couple of weeks, but he came through for me. And -3, Nick Martin with that 74 was a bit of a stinger to look at.
Yes. Yeah. Very, very frustrating. It's always going to be bigger. Hopefully we get another 166 or something of that similar against Richmond this upcoming weekend. But boys, we're moving on to round 18. So another week past the bye weeks, hopefully getting a few of these luxury trades done and a few of these, suboptimal premiums upwards. So Guesty, I'll start with you. What trades did you make last week to start us off, and then sort of what are you currently thinking about doing this week? Sort of what's your thinking in terms of players that you're looking to move on?
Yeah, thanks for making me revisit it, boss. I appreciate it. So the first one I wasn't so bothered about. Bailey Smith to grind Myers. I had the ability to pivot and get off him. I did expect Myers to have a little bit of a better week, but I think he's still turned up. So yeah, not too dissatisfied there. And then I jumped off Doc early, which I was happy with that move. But the only problem is that I jumped to Jai Caldwell. Which then
that's why you. That's what. Sorry, yeah, I didn't even realize. I didn't even click on. That's why you said, "Oh, that's why."
Yeah, and I can remember because I get notifications for AFL ratings on my Twitter, and I can remember seeing the notification for Merritt is playing midfield. Chris Scott or not Brad Scott saying that. Merritt will be playing midfield today. But it was I don't know when that. I was actually going to go back and check the time of that, but it seemed to me like it was after lockout, so I had no chance to pivot. So yeah, that just stings, particularly at this time of the season. And then of course, still not having Nazire. I mean, that hurt this week as well.
Yeah. I think he's going to get a tag this week, but yes, he's a very, very good player to watch. So obviously, one of your trades this week will be Jai Caldwell out. But obviously, if you looked at, we're chatting just pre-pod then, who's the sort of other player you're sort of looking to maybe move off of? Because obviously, you got a couple of guys there you said you're not quite happy with at the
moment. I've really actually got a few. I can do a lot this week. So I've looked at Whitfield, although, with his break even, potentially might be cheaper next week. Although I do feel like I do like that trade. But then I could also look at someone like a Jack McRae or a Zach Butters. So I think, Butters is probably one of the better midfield picks this week, particularly with the West Coast matchup. Or Jack McRae. I also think is someone that I'm probably going to need to have in my forward line. So whether I do that this week is another option. So yeah, they're basically the three players I'm kind of tossing up.
Yeah. Sean said, "Whose Facebook's going off?" Has anyone got? Yeah, is that because I heard that as well? The beat. Has anyone?
Sorry, yeah, I'll mute the tab.
Oh, that's funny. I thought I was like, yeah, that does sound like Facebook. So yes, so we've got it under control. So I'm sure people listen to the pod going, "What the hell was that noise?" Anyway, Jesse, what trade did you do last week, and what's your sort of thinking about what you might be doing this week?
Yeah, I ended up going Doc and Kako out for Dunkley and Tauru in. Zach Merritt was in my trade plans right up until like 10 minutes before the bounce, and I moved on, and that's because we had Louis on the pod, and he talked me into it. And I thought that's a great idea, and then I guess my Brisbane Lions bias kicked in, and I thought, nah, Dunkley's he can do it, and he couldn't do it, so so it all went a bit pear-shaped for me. This week, I'm looking at doing something a little bit strange. So I'm still fielding McCarthy, which is not great, and I want to sort that out. And so with, Jai Caldwell being a trade and having so much cash on his head, I want to take this as an opportunity to get McCarthy off. So at the moment, I'm still umming and ahhing about this, but I'm actually looking at like moving on from Kai Lohman and Jai Caldwell to maybe getting in Jason Horne-Francis and John Noble, because John Noble's last three, like he's averaged 96, he's priced at 83. So the Collingwood matchup isn't ideal. So that's why I'm still kind of umming and ahhing over that one.
Revenge game, though.
Yeah,
I think is that the first time he's played Collingwood, I reckon, this year. So
I can't remember. He might have. I think it might be the first one, but maybe he'll pop off. Maybe that revenge game is that's what'll tip it over the line for me.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess we'll see how it's going to go. But yeah, Lohman's obviously someone I'm also considering moving off of. Jaiden, what trade did you make last week, and what are you potentially thinking about this week?
Yeah, last week I mentioned how I was looking to get off Davidson. Had to do that because he was injured. I was going to get off Sullivan as well, but I kind of wanted a little bit more money to play around with. unfortunately, I traded out Cooper Lord, which meant my trades were locked. Like one side of them were locked before the Bailey Smith news. So it did kind of force me a little bit. I pivoted from Caldwell to Nick Martin because I needed a forward, which, worked out okay. Cost me $55,000 loss for the week, but I'll take that. And yeah, I think it worked out all right. I wanted Nick Martin this week anyway, so I'm kind of a little bit ahead of where I thought I might be.
Yeah. Oh, because you got Nick Martin. Who are you potentially looking at? What trades you learnt this week? Like guys that you're probably not happy with, and maybe a few guys you might be looking at.
Yeah, I've still got O'Sullivan, so I think it's time to cash him in, and I'll probably look to go Ned Long out as well. I think Tom Mitchell played really well. I thought maybe he could have been managed a little bit more during the game, but I think he's just super important for Collingwood. And so I think Ned Long will go. I'm looking at just getting Gulden. My projections are very biased against him due to how strange he is as a player, but I don't mind Butters as well as a way cheaper option. And I think that's where I'm at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Gulden is certainly a freak, and he's obviously returned back to form, and he's someone I'm looking at this week. My trades last week, both mine were locked on the Friday, so unfortunately I couldn't make any adjustments with Bailey Smith out, but ended up going Boxall to Ralston, banking about 20K or whatever that was, just to get some more cash gen flowing there. Then ended up going Ned Long up and going to Tom Green. I could have got Zach Merritt. That would have been really nice if I'd gone there, but Tom Green, 3/4 time. Certainly complained to Lemon and Rowan watching that at the district, complaining, saying, what have I done? I've brought in another spud. Season's going to go back down again after a good week. But thankfully, the Rockets worked, and he ended up having that 53-point last quarter. So not too bad. Tunned up, which is nice. We hopefully he'll go well next couple of weeks. Some good matchups. Then this week, probably Loman at this stage is going down probably like Ashton Moyer, just get the 230K rookie that's played a couple of games. I don't know if you guys have seen, but Jasper Alga's been ruled out for 3 to 4 weeks with an ankle injury. So that'll be a red dot. So probably would like some cover in the forward line. I was thinking about a red dot, but I thought, no, I'll get the green dot. And then putting that money on top of probably Bergman over Doherty, I just worry about that role. I think Burton's no certainty to come into the side. I don't know who else they're going to be able to bring in with those injuries. So looking potentially at going him up. Maybe Zach Merritt for a 1 week play and then potentially move back off next week if everything goes to plan, which we know in fantasy doesn't. So I'll have to hold for a couple of weeks, or going to a Gulden or a Whitfield. But Whitfield with a huge break even, I'm sort of not quite sure if I want to jump on just yet, but I might do that. And then Gulden, potential Winhager tag is the one thing that I'm sort of concerned about there as well. But final thing we'll probably quickly discuss before we get into a heap of your questions in the chat. So we've got a couple of super chats there we will answer in 2 seconds. I just want to get your boys' thoughts on this. Jess, I'll start off with you. There's a lot of these premiums that people are looking at between that sort of, I guess, 900K to like 960, 970. So you got your Zach Merritts, your Marcus Bontempellis, Zach Butters, guys like that all these coaches are looking at, along with a Lockie Whitfield. Even you want to go right up to a Gulden and spend a heap of money. Is there sort of 1 or 2 options that stand out with those guys that you sort of like, you'd think that coaches should be maybe looking at in terms of maybe they might have a good run or anything like that? Who do you sort of like out of that sort of price range?
The number one name for me is Lockie Whitfield. We saw what he did in the first half of the season, and now for him to drop a fair way below that $1 million, especially with how he works with Lockie Ash. I think he was actually target number 1 for me this week. There was an even crazier thing I was looking at doing last week, and I didn't in the end. And if I had done that, I would have been jumping on Lockie Whitfield this week. And then probably we've been kind of putting him off a little bit, but I think Zach Butters, actually, like we've been talking about watching out for tags with Zach Butters, and it just kind of hasn't really eventuated. I know he had that one slightly lower score of like 79 a couple of weeks ago, but he still had 30 disposals. So he's racking up the pill, and he's still a really, really nice price. Probably those 2 names for me.
Yeah, I do like both of those names. Jaiden, is there a couple of names that sort of you like the look of and are sticking out to you?
Yeah, Butters was probably the one for me. that kind of racket. In terms of next three, I think Merritt, Butters, Heaney come out the best with the numbers. So, yeah, either of those would go all right. I'm probably not going to go back to Merritt just because I just traded him out. I know that's kind of silly, but yeah, I'll just go for the kind of the run home rather than just like this one game, hopefully.
Yeah, well, I was actually going to ask you about that. You mentioned, so Zach Merritt's obviously got the Richmond matchup this week, but then he goes into a number of weeks that pretty much every second week he's got a tag coming. So he's got Giants a week after. No, Bedford's done less tagging, but you just sort of think that that's going to happen there. Then they go into the Dogs. So I think Merritt scored a 53 against her in the year, and it wasn't tagged. It was just a poor performance from Essendon in general. Then they go Sydney, which you'd think would be a Jordan there. And I think then they've got sort of a few other tags after that. I think there's a Windhager there, a Carlton potentially as well. What do you think about coaches that are jumping on Merritt this week that are thinking maybe for a 1 week play, maybe they can trade the week after, or if they hold, I guess, for the Dogs game and then trade after that. So as a 3 week play, what do you think about Merritt as that short-term play, particularly if they've got all their rookies off field and they're sort of in that luxury trade season?
Yeah, I think it's completely fine to get Merritt. I'm not worried at all. I just don't. I would just rather go somewhere else now that I've just traded him. But I don't really care too much about tags just because of how unpredictable they are. I'd much rather trade based on role changes and stuff. I can't be bothered to sit here and try and predict tags for every single player. Yeah, like because you'll get a random injury every week and they'll score really low, and a tag would end up the same anyway. I just think that with these types of players that you have seen do it for a long time, you can kind of just be like, all right, it's Zach Merritt. We'll just hope that he can even pump out at 85, 90 if he gets tagged, and hope that he can make up the most of it in other games where he doesn't, like he did on the weekend.
Yeah. That's a good point, actually, yeah, because with that, obviously with Caldwell out, Parrish not there as well, you think that even if he does get attention, he'll be in that midfield and hopefully just getting to, as you said, that 80, 85, 90 sort of score. Whereabouts is you haven't projected? I don't know if you've done the projections yet this week yet, but what have you got Merritt sort of projected? Is he number one for the week or top sort of 5 or something?
No, they're not. None of these Bombers are up very high. I think just the team is just pretty average at the moment, so it's really hard to get them any kind of confidence around the whole team. So none of them in the top 5. But in terms of Merritt, he jumped from M8 for season long. He jumped from M8 to M2 in this week. So that could be to do with Caldwell. But yeah, I did like that I had Merritt and Steele in the top 8 or top 10 even for the year, and they both delivered. So hopefully they can keep that up.
Yeah, exactly. Guesty, your thoughts quickly on the Merritt play, and then sort of maybe the two guys that in that sort of price range, that 900k-ish range that you sort of like the look of.
All right, let me have a look. So what do we got? So I am a bit more worried about the tags, right? So obviously we got Richmond this week, right? Big. So this week it's really good for him. GWS. Do we think GWS is going to be a tag there, Buzz?
I think so. Rowson's been playing a lot more of that midfield role instead of Bedford, but you'd sort of think that. But then again, Giants might just go, well, we think we'll probably beat Essendon anyway, so maybe they don't worry about the tag. That's the other thing, right? But you'd assume yes. Well,
yeah. I mean, so, yeah. Well, okay. I mean, you'd assume, yeah, that's what I would have thought. You'd assume yes, right? Western Bulldogs, no. Sydney, you'd assume yes. Geelong, you'd assume yes. St Kilda, you'd assume yes. Carlton, you'd assume yes. I mean, that's I can hardly count 5 out of the next 7 games, right? So while he's juicy this week, he's not someone that I'd probably be looking to bring into my side. Maybe you could for a couple of week play. I know you were talking about it maybe for a 1 week play pre-pod, Bales, but I mean, I don't like messing around with stuff like that. That's there's too much can change in such a short period of time. That's why, alternatively, that's why I like Butters as an option, right? Because while Merritt's got Richmond, Butters has got West Coast, right? So it's kind of like that sugar hit, that juicy first hit kind of on debut kind of thing for your team. So That's why I'm looking more that way.
Yeah. So yeah, Butters be the one. Is there one other name that you'd sort of like look of in that price range if you weren't to go for Butters?
Lockie Whitfield for sure. Like, I mean, once again, I don't even think that we got to be too worried about the fact that his break even is going to be, I mean, 140. Let's face it, he can hit that any day of the week, right? So, I don't think he will, particularly first week back. But I don't think it really matters. Like, you're going to save maybe 30 grand on getting in, someone who we considered was D1 at the beginning of the season. So. I do think he's a steal, but I think there's other things to be considered. I am looking very much at like a Nasai bringing him in, but I'm concerned about the next 2 rounds and possibly trade targets there. I think Jack McRae, while playing Sydney this week, they're prone to tag. I'm not sure that they're going to tag a Jack McRae, so I think he might be all right. But I mean that's once again, Lockie Whitfield or Zach Butters. I haven't done a lot of deep digging this week, but I feel there's not a huge amount of options, particularly for my side this week anyway. So yeah, whereas luxury trade season, right? It's also about who you're trading out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then I guess the 2 guys I like, so obviously I like, I've obviously mentioned Whitfield about potentially an option. I do like Zach Merritt. I think for those coaches that have got the ability to loop and have got a red dot, because I've got a lot of green dots on my bench, thanks to Angus Hasty for all of a sudden making another appearance again in the St Kilda side, even though he turned his first 3 kicks over really bad. I'm thinking about Merritt potentially as a 1-week play if everything went well, but I'd be happy to hold him for an extra 2 weeks if possible. I just like the Richmond matchup. If you want to be aggressive and get that matchup, I like that. And then, as you said, Guesty, Lockie Whitfield, like he was averaging, before he got he's injured 23, he was averaging 108.1, which we're going on about obviously how good Nasai's playing, but that's like only a couple of points per game behind Nasai. He would be essentially the level D2 with Connor Rozee. So we know how good he is.
Where he was playing forward a bit?
He was, but then he moved back about a game and a half before that injury.
I think that's a discounted average based on the fact they were throwing his role around a little bit as well. So, I think 108 is probably on the conservative side of what he's really going to score.
Yeah, and he's got good matchups, right? So like Geelong is okay, but then he goes into Eston next week, which is a fantastic matchup. I don't think if you don't get Whitfield next week, this week you're going to have to at least be circling him next week, because he's going to be a fantastic option and probably one of the most traded in next week. So I do like the Whitfield play, and it's probably between him and Merritt, but sort of who I'm looking at going to this week. Final thing I wanted to ask Jesse about was Errol Gulden. So he's obviously the one that people are looking to pay up for, and I heard you mentioning on obviously your own podcast saying about how you've paid up for people and it's sort of gone the other way and it hasn't worked out. And I found that to be the same. Me, Dacos, Bont, you name it, all these guys you pay up for. So different time of year though, and I guess Errol, we've done before with Jaiden projections, he is a bit of a freak, and so you can't really. He's just one of a kind almost. Can you pay up for him, and do you think he might cop attention from a certain Marcus Winhager this week, or do you think it might be able to go to a Isaac Heaney or even a Chad Warner?
So the discussion we were having on our pod this week was that we kind of feel like we both felt that the tag was maybe more likely to go to a Heaney or a Warner, because those guys are the big impact players at the source often. Gulden is absolutely a freak and probably one of the best players in the comp, to be fair. But he spends, what's that, like 30% CBAs or something like that. He kind of gets the outside ball. He comes in from the wing. And so our thinking was that maybe teams are better off nullifying the source rather than the chain, I suppose. In terms of can you trade him in, like for sure, I think you can trade him in. But it's probably team dependent, and it's probably, like my team, for example, I can't do it. I'm just not in a structural position to go to the top. Like I did that with a Jordan Dawson. It didn't really work out. I did it with a Kennedy. It kind of worked out for a week and then stopped working out. So I think you can do it, but you probably want to be one of those teams that have your 22 set. And like if you have a Caldwell, then I think an easy sideways trade is a Caldwell to a Gulden, as long as your other 21 are pretty solid.
Yep. Yep, I agree. I think Gulden next week against North Melbourne could be big. So if you can get him in a week early, if he puts up an 85-90, even if he gets attention, then you get that good matchup there next week. And I think they've got one of the best runs home of any midfield in the comp. I've got a couple of super chats which we'll get to, and they're both from our good friend Tim. So Tim, the first super chat, he says, "Who do I trade? Who do I trade? Do I go Chera to McRae, Dale to Whitfield?" Or instead, which one would you trade out of Warner, Dale, Chera, or Warner? So, Jaiden, I'll go to you for this one. Do you like? What do you think about Chera to McRae and then Dale to Whitfield? And would you trade one of those other guys instead of Chera and Dale?
I reckon Dale to Whitfield would be really nice. I'd love to have an extra trade just to be able to pull that off this week. Just with Dale, got the tag. Doesn't have a very good run from here. I think just in terms of like he's had his good run, made a lot of money. Now he's reached the peak, got tagged on the way back down. I'd love to make that trade. So that's where I would sit. If you need a bit more forward cover, then you could go for McRae. But I really wanted to do the Dale to Whitfield move, but it just doesn't really work out because they're kind of a similar price. I don't really have a spare trade just to be able to flick that across.
Yeah. And what do you think about Warner and Daniel? Would you trade either of those guys? Maybe you probably can't do it with Dale, but maybe for the Chera move to McRae, would you go Warner or Daniel if Tim can afford to trade them out as well?
I've got both of them around 90 and McRae's at 99, so it doesn't gain as many points as like a Dale to Whitfield. I have that at 11 points at the moment. And that's like with Whitfield's injury, like score kind of being involved as well, a little bit. So that could reasonably go up as well, that gap. So I'm pretty confident in the getting off Dale now while he's at his peak price. Whitfield plays Geelong this week. If you did want to do it, you can. If you don't really mind about the money this time of year, Geelong are a very good matchup for kick-in players, and GRS are like setting all new records for points from kick-in chains. They're scoring around 224 fantasy points per game just from kick-in chains. Like they're just kicking it to each other. I thought it was going to end after last year's debacle, but it just never ends. They're like won 4 extra games just on the bad goal kicking of the other team. They just force these people to miss somehow.
Yeah, and Whitfield loves a kick-in, or he loves a +6 from a kick-in. So we do like that for fantasy. And then Tim Ashworth, second super chat here. He was asking about Warner to Martin and Daniel to Gulden next week. But Jesse, what are your thoughts on Jack Martin as a play? A few people have been looking at that maybe as they don't have money on the bench. Maybe they go Caleb Daniel down to a Jack Martin to get a cash grab to maybe get a guy like a Bergman, Doherty, one of these guys up to a premium. What are your thoughts on a Jack Martin play? And I'll also mention, shout out to Liam, Max Hall as well as another name there. Those sort of two around that sort of just under 600K. What are your thoughts about those two guys?
We were talking about Jack Martin this week as well, and I feel like he's maybe he could be one of those trap players where, he's had a couple of good weeks, but we were thinking about, like what's Chris Scott's finals run plans? Like what's the best 22 that he wants to have at his disposal as they make, a top 3 berth, I suppose. And we just wondered if Jack Martin could be one of those players that maybe doesn't end up in those plans. And so you trade him in and then the floor kind of falls out from under you. Having said that, like his stats are pretty good from the last couple of weeks. So I think it's one that you could do, but I can be a bit risk averse sometimes. So maybe that's to my detriment. I just feel like it's a move that scares me a little bit, especially with, Chris Scott's propensity to kind of flick the magnets around. And then was it Max Hall was the other name?
Yes.
To be honest, look, I haven't looked into Max Hall too much. What have his scores been over the last 3 or so? I know he had a big one. It was 124 or something.
Yeah, scored 124 last week, and then the week before scored an 88. So I didn't actually look at his CBAs, but he seemed to be a lot more around the ball compared to previous weeks. So CBAs, did he have any? No, okay. No, he didn't have any. I thought he did, but he just seemed to be around the ball a lot more. Maybe it's that extra mid up to sort of the stoppage.
He has been floating through the middle the last few weeks, which we we have noticed. St Kilda seem to be floating a few more players through the midfield than they have in the past, and sharing the ball around a lot more. Like his disposals have been up, so that's kind of representing that. It's another one where I probably don't feel comfortable trading into it personally, but I suppose if you're absolutely strapped for cash, maybe you could.
Yep. Don't mind it. Could be even an F7 play if you've got the money there, and maybe put them on the bench to loop between a couple of players. If you guys are tuning in as well, chuck your questions at the bottom of the chat, because you guys smash it every week with all the live chat there, and there's so much here. So just chuck your question back at the bottom, and we'll sort of go from there. So Jat's got this one here. Guesty, Anderson, 22 at halftime, but then 100-point second half. Is he a target or is he a trap?
Look, I know a lot of pundits out there have got him in their top 8 mids, and maybe he's under the blanket towards the back end of that. But one of the things that we do know about Anderson is that he is that kind of yo-yo scorer. And then the other thing that we know as well is that Damien Hardwick style of play as well is not necessarily conducive to, consistent ceiling or consistent high scores, right? So I think, I think that's if you're trading him in, you're just understanding what you're buying. He's going to be around the end of that top 8 mids, but yeah, it'll be up one week, down the next week, and that's just what you're going to get.
Yeah. Oh, if you end up saying trap, don't tell Jordy. Don't tell about his boy that he's a trap. So,
right. Yeah. Look, I mean, once again, but I think he's the kind of player as well that's quite divisive. Like, you do get coaches that love a guy like that, and you get coaches that are just like, no, not going anywhere near that. And like Jesse sort of said before, he said he's a bit more of a conservative coach, and I tend to be a little bit like that as well. And I just don't like that out of a player.
Yeah. He actually reminds me slightly, obviously different player, but in terms of fantasy, shout out to all the OG fantasy coaches out there. Reminds me a bit of Brent Stanton. We'll go on the stretch of 5-6 weeks averaging 120, then he'll just drop 3 scores of like 60 to 80 just out of nowhere. So, had to get a Brent Stanton reference in there. One of the best, one of my favourite players of all time in fantasy. Riley Field, Jaiden says, get Bailey Smith back in or bank the 300K and go with Zach Butters. So we know that Bailey Smith obviously missed with illness, but then he's now got Giants and then St Kilda. So potentially a couple of tags going there, but being a forward, do you just bring him in and bring him back so you have to have the headache of getting him back, or would you go with the Butters and look at Bailey Smith potentially the following couple of weeks?
Yeah, it's tricky because of that Geelong fixturing. Everyone talks about it. It's very ideal. I reckon maybe at this time of year you could probably just go against Bailey Smith. Like everyone, maybe like 80% of people would have him that didn't get the chance to trade him. So you could just go against him. Obviously, being the most expensive player, only real ways down. And I have Butters at M1 for the rest of the year. So.
Right.
You could go there. It's still an 11-point gap to what I've Smith at, but you could just save the money. If you're going to use the 300K this week, then yeah. But if you've got it lying around, I reckon you should just maybe do it. Like, unless you've got a specific plan of where you're going to use the money, probably just get him in and hope that he doesn't miss again, or maybe just keep an eye on those kind of pre-game. I think he's all back into training and stuff now. So it's a tricky one.
Yeah. Well, there's always something going on with Bailey Smith, that's for sure. But yeah, his top 1,000 ownership and top 100 is actually now 86%. So a lot of people did hold, but there were a few coaches that jumped off. So we'll be interested to see what that number looks like next week. When the round is all finished. What we got here? Ashwin has asked this one, Jesse. Hewitt to Nick Dacos or Caleb Daniel to Lockie Whitfield? Which one would you go if you could only do one?
Oh, I'd probably get Whitfield in, I think. I just really like what he can do in the back in the back line. Chances are you got a bunch of guys with DPP. You can, if you're still a bit short in your overall lineup. You can push someone forward into your midfield, or maybe you've still got Nick Martin running around in your back line. You can flick him into your forward line or something like that. But it's a pretty close one. Yeah.
Oh, Ashwin might be asking if he can do both, and if it is both, it's definitely a tick. But yeah, if you go, I think if you can go one, maybe you do the Daniel trade and keep Hewitt for a week. But Nick Dacos does have a very tasty matchup against Gold Coast on Friday night. Sean's got next question, Guesty. Hey guys, thoughts on trading Caldwell to Zach Merritt, and then for both trades? Okay, in both scenarios. So he's going Caldwell to Merritt. So would you go Dale to Gulden or Doherty to Whitfield or Butters?
So, yeah, I mean, I don't have the projections that Jaiden does, right? So, obviously, I would be leaning to... So, hang on, just quickly walk me through that again, Buzz.
So, Dale to Gulden or Doc to one of Whitfield or Butters?
I'm really worried about Doc in that role and how it could change at any moment. That's the one. I'd be more keen to jump off Doc than I would Dale. And then, I do kind of have maybe the top two kind of trading targets as being Butters and Lockie Whitfield, but just because of the matchups with Eagles this week for Butters, I'd be trading in Butters this week and then looking for the nice juicy matchup for the Essendon matchup for GWS next week and bring in Lockie Whitfield then.
Yeah, I would also do Doc to one of those two. If you do want Gulden next week, then go Whitfield this week, because I think if you want both those guys, you want to go one of them this week, the next one the week after. But if you're happy to get Whitfield next week, get Butters this week, Whitfield next week, and then maybe you get Gulden in a couple of weeks, then I'll do like that one there.
This week for Gulden?
Well, that's what we're saying about Windhager potentially going there, because looking at the CBAs the last 2 weeks for St Kilda against Freo, Windhager did not attend a CBA, and I believe he played out on a wing. And then I believe he also played out in a wing a bit in the Hawthorn game, and he had the 8 CBAs, so not a lot. So 8 CBAs sort of seems pretty similar to like a Gulden type role, but do they keep him there, or do they put him into the midfield and go with a Heaney or a Warner? That's sort of what I'm tossing up.
Yeah, well, I'd be concerned this week about a tag from Windhager to Gulden. And then I'm also concerned about that high price, right? So, particularly when you've got options of a Butters this week or a Lockie Whitfield, I would be saving your money and going there. And that's only now much more supported for me by Jaiden and his projections for the rest of the year.
Mo says, who goes first, Doc or Rankin? And if so, who is the better target, McRae, Butters, Whitfield, Sinclair, or Merritt? If I had to trade one, that's
a tough one.
If Doc holds his spot, which you'd assume he probably will after being named again last week, and is still in the defence, and you can go Rankin to a mid or a defender, I'm trading Rankin just because that forward role is there, and he's obviously playing well in the forward line at the moment, but it's just not going to put up ceiling scores. But if Rankin, you can only go Rankin to a forward, then I think maybe Doherty to a defender or mid sounds better. And obviously we talked about Butters, Whitfield, Sinclair, Merritt before. If you want that 1 week play, 2 week play, I know a lot of people don't like doing that, but if you are going to go for that, Merritt's got the best matchup of them this week. But if you want them for the rest of the year, then probably one of Butters or Whitfield is probably the way to go. I do like Whitfield out of those two. Matt D. I'll go to Jaiden for this one here. Who has the best run for the remainder of the year? Jordan Clark or Bailey Dale? I'm assuming he's looking at trading the other one out. Who's got the better run?
They've both had a massive decrease compared to what they were when I brought them in. They were kind of around that D5, D6 range with those middle of the year runs. Next 3 for Jordan Clark, very good, around 95 compared to Dale 87, and they kind of there's kind of a 5-point gap for most of the year, but the next 3 for Clark, I'm a bit more optimistic on holding him, just for the he's one of Freo's very, very best players when he plays well. So it makes sense they tagged him. Dale, I've owned him in other years. It's a very frustrating watch sometimes. I'm hoping that Jordan Clark can just hold it together, and I would like to trade Bailey Dale, but so I think I'll have to hold both, but I'm more confident on Clark just kind of sitting there at D6 for now, and then I'll kind of reassess after the next three. I think he can go all right.
Yeah, I agree. Looking at the matchups there, Adelaide and Brisbane for Dale doesn't look good at all, whereas Hawthorn, Collingwood, West Coast for Jordan Clark doesn't look too bad. I know Collingwood have been a bit tougher this year, but I think that's a little bit better. Probably not any tags either. Max Hansen. Yep.
That run after, though, from round 21 on for Jordan Clark is pretty nasty. Carlton, Port Adelaide, Brisbane. You'd want to be off those 3 rounds.
Yeah. So trade Dale now and, then trade Jordan Clark in about 3-4 weeks' time. I reckon that's a good plan. Max Hansen, Jesse, should I go Macrae this week and get Whitfield next week with Whitfield's break even and match up less likely to get away from me? So there's obviously a lot of people looking at that Whitfield break even being 149. Would you be going still Whitfield regardless of the break even, or do you think there's a bit of a case to be made that you go Macrae this week, a little bit of a tougher matchup, but then he's got I think Jordy referred to it as a green mile, and a few people have said that with St Kilda's run. Where would you be going this week?
Look, I think that's probably the order to go in is Jack Macrae, then Lachie Whitfield. I haven't been super. I think I'm in the minority here. I haven't been super big on Jack Macrae all year. He's real spotty with his scoring, and I think he's had that spike game, but that was a really funny game of football. All the Saints guys were right up the top with their scoring for that whole game. We had Jack Steele, we had Jack Macrae. We tend to see the split between those two guys going the way of one or the other rather than both of them doing really well. So that was kind of a strange thing to see. But having said that, like at this time of year, you can't really argue with fixture. And so, probably looking to get on top of that as best you can. So Jack Macrae is probably the way to go now to get him in for his fixture. And then, that 149 break even, you might even be able to shave a few bucks off the top of that as well.
Yeah.
For Lachie.
Connor. Yeah, exactly. I'll go back to you, Jesse, for this one, because Connor Johns, because I know you chatted about a couple of these guys in your pod as well. So he's looking at going one of Job Shanahan, Ashton Moore, or Taj Houghton, and obviously that's providing he makes his debut. So I think Houghton's just over 300K. I believe Shanahan's about the same, and Ashton Moore is 230K. Are you just saving the money now and just getting the 230K guy, or do you think you'd go for one than maybe those other two, particularly Job, because he's got that negative break even?
Yeah, look, I think again, it's that annoying answer of like it is still a little bit team dependent in the sense that like if your bench is looking really spotty and you haven't got the guys that you really want on field yet, then I guess actually a better way of saying that is if your team value is still below that like 25 mil or something like that, then you probably don't want to throw in the towel on the cash gen yet. And so, bringing in those absolute basement guys that may not be there the following week, may not have that job security, is maybe a bit fraught with danger. But on the other hand, if your team is looking really, really healthy and that, the cheaper guy gets you to the better upgrade that's going to get those points on the board for you now, then I don't see a problem with doing that at all.
Yep. Next one is from Laura Goodall. Says Dale to Whitfield seems to be a lock. So Guesty, thoughts on Chera to Merritt or Butters? So what are your thoughts on trading Chera out to one of those two guys? And but by your answer before, I think you're going to say Butters if you're going to choose.
There you go.
Yeah, but no thoughts on trading out Chera. What are your thoughts on moving on Chera?
Okay, let's talk about trading Chera. Look, he seems to be in a lot of questions that people have been asking across the different podcasts that I've been listening to over the last couple of weeks, right? So I'm not so concerned. I mean, obviously he had that 60-odd score where Carlton just looked all sort of out of sorts. And, the other thing is that's kind of what it's kind of what I've seen from Chera in the past as well. Like, I think, we've seen that kind of 95 averaging guy, but he's certainly been performing better than that this year. But, still dropping the odd kind of floor score occasionally. Look, kind of bounced back, tougher matchup last week against Collingwood. 93, not great, but, not too far off the kind of top 8 mids, maybe 10 points kind of thing. And I'm not that concerned about his role. Like, I think with Walsh out, I think, can't really need him in that midfield, and I don't really see him moving away from there too much. I'm not worried about him. I'm not hopping off. Admittedly, I've got bigger problems in my side, but for the time being right now, I'd be looking more at players like a Caleb Daniel, an Isaac Rankin, maybe trying to upgrade a Callum Mills. If you've got a Callum Mills there sitting at D6, I think the top 6 defenders over the past 5 rounds have averaged, I think, a low of 104, right? So you're talking, maybe that's 10, 15 points unders there. Like, that maybe would be a better upgrade than an Adam Chera. Once again, a Caleb Daniel against like a Jack McRae, that might be a better upgrade. So, yeah, I don't think he's urgent. Yeah, maybe he's on the chopping block, but I don't think he's urgent.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Like, looking at the CBAs from last week, Cripps had 23, Hewitt had 23, then Chera 18. Then you had Moyer, who had 9, along with Zach Williams, who obviously was subbed out injured. Then Lord had 3. That was it. So it's a pretty tight midfield mix there. Obviously, we know Carlton could change every week, but I'll probably agree that he doesn't have to go. But yeah, Brisbane matchup this week isn't great, but he's not going to get a tag or anything like that, so maybe he goes okay. Matt asking, does Whitfield cop a tag this week? I wouldn't think so. I know a few people have looked at like a Mullen there, but if they're going to run any tag, it's going to be Finn Callaghan. If anyone watched that game on Friday night, Finn Callaghan was fantastic, and it's been a breakout year for him. So he'll cop the tag, probably from like an O'Connor or maybe an Atkins or someone, but I don't think Mullen's he doesn't normally go to like a halfback if unless I'm forgetting him tagging a halfback. He normally goes to those quicker mids like a Butters, Merritt, Dacos sort of type player. So I think Whitfield should be fine. I'll ask you this get a question, Guesty, as well. So yes, that's the username. I'm not getting excited about anything. Is saying Liam Duggan or Tom Cole for D6. So a couple of pods. I'm going to say no to Tom Cole, but I want to get your thoughts on Duggan, because Duggan's last 5 games, he's had 4 scores over 90, including his last 2 being 99 and 116 against Collingwood and GWS, who are really hard. So if you want a fun pod 830K as a West Coast fan, could you endorse getting Liam Duggan?
No, I would still be looking at a Colby McKercher or a Callum Mills over Liam Duggan at that price.
Yeah, I would agree, particularly with Mills. Mills has got those 2 good matchups, North Melbourne and St Kilda, and Colin McKercher. If anyone was worried about that forward time last quarter, I still think copped a knock from somewhere, because he was on the bike at 3/4 time, and Drew Jones, obviously shout out to Goat Fantasy, obviously doing great work there, was down at North Train today and said that Colby trained across half-back and was there. So no issues with him if anyone was worried. What do we got here for next question? Tony Ford asking Jaiden about Sam Darcy. Is he a must-trade? Obviously, massive save on the weekend, 65-point last quarter, if you don't mind. But are you jumping off him, or do you think you could still hold?
Have we learnt our lesson about key forwards? That's what I want to know. For all the coaches out there that traded into Sam Darcy, have we learnt our lesson about key forwards?
I feel like now is a decent time to do so. Brisbane and Adelaide next 2. So from a projections point of view, it's low 70s for both of those. The rest of the games for the rest of the year are all pretty solid above that. But yeah, now would probably be the time. If you went, kind of to that F6 kind of range, you're probably looking around more like low 90s. So there's 14 or so points you could probably gain. And yeah, just be glad that he had that save, and I guess take it. And unless you think like a player like him is like more like he's just too good for the matchup. Like sometimes you would rather play on someone who's super duper good, and he can just like dominate. I don't know. I think you probably just take the save and run.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and as a Crows fan, I hope he doesn't play well this week, because if he plays really well, I don't think we're going to win. So, yeah, that'll be a nervous watch for me. Castle of Riches, what do we think of Bourbon to Whitfield and Long to Butters? Got enough money to go up to anyone in any position? Well, they're ticks for me. They're great trades. We're all of us fans of Whitfield and Butters. So, yep, I would be ticking those Castle of Riches off and locking those in. Red Lighting, Jesse says, should I go Caldwell and Doherty to Green and Butters? A couple of sideways moves there. Or go Caldwell and Liddy to Gulden and Stevens?
Caldwell and Doherty to who? What was the first one again? Sorry,
Green and Butters.
I'd probably do that, assuming he's not this person's not fielding a rookie. Yeah, I'd do the first one.
Yeah, I agree as well. What do you think about Stevens, Jesse? Obviously, he was fantastic. Had, I think, the most score involvements from a debutant or something like that. He obviously was a late in for Tyson Stenger, I believe, on the Friday. But
yeah,
it's Geelong. We know what happens with these Geelong rookies.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, we've seen Ted Closey. We thought Ted Closey was going to be a really good cash generator earlier in the season, and then he was omitted from the side. We thought Mitch Nevitt, after he got off to a cracking start, was going to be a mainstay in the midfield, and then he was omitted and never seen him again. So I just sorry, I was wondering if I should go for the and never seen again. I couldn't commit to it.
You should have gone for it. Would have been brilliant.
I couldn't commit to it. Sorry. Yeah. Anyway, so he played well, but you just never know what Chris Scott's going to do, and I guess it's one of those things where it's like if your team's in a pretty good spot and he somehow gets you to something else and you've got a really good best 22, then maybe you can take the risk. But I'd really just prefer to, in this situation, go for that double upgrade in the first option.
Yeah.
Should have gone for it, Guesty.
I would have fallen off my chair. I really would have.
No, I love it. Redlining was also saying he's looking at obviously Green and Butters, but he could go Bont or Whitfield over Butters there. I think Bont is still a good option, but his next two are a bit tough against Adelaide and Brisbane, so maybe you go Butters and Whitfield ahead of them. All right, what we'll do, I've got about 5 minutes to go before we wrap up, because Guesty has got a few things he's got to do directly on the hour when it finishes. So we'll do rapid fire. We'll do sort of some quick questions. So let's go. Sean Collins, Jaiden, thoughts on Josh Dacos with the next three matchups?
Yeah, solid enough. Next three.
Yeah, and he also asking, can you would you trade Dunkley?
People just traded him in last week.
Yeah. Next three, pretty good. After that, really dies away. So you could get away with holding him for a little bit longer.
Yeah. Jesse, just your quick thoughts on Dunkley, because I know you're a Lions fan.
Look, we were actually talking about on our pod a couple of weeks ago, and we had Vams on. Vams was talking about you, Jaiden, and talking about how he uses your stats to look at specific players and the way they accumulate points. So that's kind of why I brought Dunkley in. But I don't want to have to trade him back out. I'm also just I'm a Brisbane homer, so got to have my guy in there.
Yeah. Well, Jack's saying McCluggage, thoughts? Carlton Dogs, Suns, Collingwood next four. Jesse?
Look, I like McCluggage. He's had, I think, probably his best season for a long time or ever even. And he's been one of those sleepers who I think's just kind of gone under the radar for the year. I don't think I'd be trading him in, though, when we have all of these other names that are maybe more proven fantasy commodities, like, the names we've been talking about for the whole episode, Butters, Whitfield, etc. But also he's got the same draw that Dunkley's got, and that tail end of the season. I think there are probably just better names that you can get in for less money than Hugh McCluggage. But I think, man, he was a miss. Like, he could have been a great trade in, 2 months ago.
Yeah. Will Byatt says, who goes first, Guesty? Dale, Rankin, or Long? Who are you trading first?
I'm trading Rankin out of those three. Dale's probably up there as well. Long, I'm not sure. I don't have Long, so I haven't really been following along. I know he stopped. He was performing before the buys and then hasn't performed that well since. But I don't know. I haven't been watching him.
Yeah.
How'd you rank him,
I would go. I'd normally say Long because you can get a better player, but he's got Gold Coast this week, so maybe you go Rankin this week, get maybe McRae or something, then go Long out next week. And probably Dale's probably the one you're probably happier to hold out of those three, but three you probably don't want either.
5 goals from Rankin on the weekend to get to his 100, right? So we just got to, I would not be surprised if he throws up a 60 next week. So then again, we've seen
that for the Crows.
All right. So, and there's a bigger differential from the top 6 in the defensive line than the forward. So that's something to consider as well. But, I think I'm not sure that Dale is likely to hit a 60 this week, but I think it's quite likely that Rankin would.
Yeah. DJ, Tom Green or Finn Callaghan, can you split them? Yes, I'll go Tom Green because Callaghan will probably get the tags, but Callaghan is a very, very good player. Jaiden, Asher Anderson, who are you going?
I'll go Ash.
Yeah, I would agree. And Guesty's saying he's got to head off. So we will wrap up there. Apologies if we didn't get to your question. There are a lot of questions flying through. And everyone knows when we all discuss and we say rapid fire, it's never rapid fire. But there you go. But as we wrap up, for the people that missed it before, we'll go through our current trade plans as of Tuesday night. So Jesse, for the people that missed it before, what are you currently looking at doing with your trades? Oh, on mute, Jesse.
I swore I wasn't going to do that first time on. I'm still fielding a McCarthy, so I want to sort that out. I've taken too long, so I'm actually going to trade out Kai Lohman and Jai Caldwell with the injury news, and I'm going to get Jason Horne-Francis to bring in for his West Coast Eagles matchup. And I think there's a bit of value in John Noble, junk time John Noble, so I'm going to see if I can do that in my back line, but who knows if I'm going to do that come Thursday night.
Yeah. Beautiful, mate. Jaiden, your trades?
Yeah, I'm going Finn O'Sullivan to Stevens, and that unlocks Ned Long to Gulden.
Beautiful. Guesty?
Jai Caldwell to Zach Butters and Isaac Rankin to Bailey Smith.
Beautiful. And then for me, at the moment, Kyle Lohman down to Ashton Moyer, and then I'll be going Miles Bergman up to Zach Merritt or Lockie Whitfield, be one of those two coming in for me. Also, Errol Gulden in the mix there as well. But there we go. That is the Q&A done for another Tuesday night. But if you guys missed out on your question being answered and you'd like an answer to your question, or you'd like a team review, or you'd just like to help us support us a little bit extra, you can head to our Patreon, patreon.com/AFL Fantasy Fanatics, and get involved in all of the fun there. I'm recording the Patreon Q&A tomorrow night, so if you've got questions and you'd like them answered there, I do answer all the questions that come through. So you can click link in the description and, head on over if you'd like to get involved. But Jesse, mate, thank you very much for jumping on. Good to finally have you on the show, mate. Where can the people find you across the socials? And then more importantly, where can people get the Content Fantasy Footy Show into their airwaves?
Thanks, Bales. Thanks for having me again. It was really cool jumping on with you guys. We run a podcast called the Content Fantasy Footy Show. You can listen to us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter at Contest Fantasy, and my co-host, K-Man, you can follow him at K-Man_TC Fantasy on Twitter as well. Thanks again so much for having me.
Yeah. Did I say Content Fantasy Footy Show?
You did, but I wasn't going to call you out.
Mate. You might as well have. Yeah, that's what a lot of people do that on here. They call me out for anything anything I do. So, but yes, apologies for that. I did meant to say contest, not content. Don't know why I said it, but anyway, mate, thanks for jumping on. Very much appreciate you jumping on. I'm sure we'll have you on again, along with K-Man as well. Jaiden, mate, where can the people find you across the socials and link to your website?
Yeah, you can find the website statsforjaiden.com.au. So all projections this week, rest of the year, and also how players score their points, as I mentioned.
Yeah, beautiful, mate. And Guesty, where can people find you?
Tim Guest, AU.
Yeah, you can find me at BAILSDT across the socials and us at AFL Fantasy Fans on X. If you did enjoy the video and you're watching on YouTube now on the replay, smash a like on the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. We're trying to hit 5K subscribers. So if you can help us reach that, that'd be very much appreciated. If you're tuning in on the podcast, 5-star rating and review would be very, very much appreciated as well. We'll be back on Friday for our pre-lockout chat. Same time as always, 6 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Perth time. And I've obviously got the content dropping all the other days throughout the rest of the week. So thanks, guys, for tuning in. And we'll catch you guys on Friday for another pre-lockout chat. So thanks, everyone. Have a good night. See ya.